We were the 3Js, a bit like the Three Musketeers, but a lot younger. We all lived in the same street and had been friends all our lives. We did everything together. I'm Jane, and my friends were Jack and John. We thought we were really cool calling ourselves the 3Js. I honestly thought we would be friends forever, but then the unthinkable happened. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, or your world might get turned upside down too. I remember that Sunday morning as though it was yesterday. Even though I was only 10 years old at the time, I woke up early and went downstairs to the kitchen. My mom and dad were sitting eating their breakfast. As I walked in, they both stopped talking and looked at me. "Sit down, Jane," said Mom. "We have something to tell you." What Mom and Dad told me then brought my world crashing down. "Dad has got a new job in another city, and we will be moving there next week," said Mom. I looked at her in shock. "But I don't want to move," I said. "I like living here, and my friends are here." "You'll soon make new friends at your new school," said Dad. "I don't want new friends. I already have Jack and John. We are the 3Js, I cried. But it was no use me pleading with them. The decision had been made. I was heartbroken. John, Jack, and I had been friends since we were babies. We spent all of our time together. In the summer, we could go to the beach and have competitions who would build the best sandcastle. John and Jack would always compete against each other in everything. Although we were all good friends, I secretly had a bit of a crush on John, of course. I'd never said anything to him. I didn't want to spoil our friendship. Also, I had a feeling that Jack might like me, but I only thought of him as a friend. He was a bit too intense sometimes, like the time when we all arranged to go to watch a movie. It was a Saturday morning in early springtime. The days were just beginning to warm up, and we were all looking forward to going into town and going to the cinema. "Let's meet in front of the cinema at 1 o'clock, said John. "Sure," I replied. "Okay," said Jack. But just before I was about to leave my house, the telephone rang. It was Jack. "I can't come to the movies, Jane," he said. "My mom has just decided we're going to visit my grandparents." "Oh, that's a shame," I said. "You're not still going to go with John, are you?" asked Jack. Yeah, probably," I said hesitantly. I knew Jack didn't like it if John and I did something without him, but we had been looking forward to going to see this movie all week. We weren't doing anything wrong, were we? I said goodbye to Jack and went off to meet John at the cinema. When I arrived, he was standing there waiting. "Where's Jack?" he asked. "Oh, he couldn't make it. He had to go see his grandparents," I said. I decided not to mention what Jack had said. John already thought that Jack was jealous sometimes. I didn't want to make it worse. The following day, as we all walked to school together, I noticed that Jack was a bit quiet. He was probably still annoyed we had gone to the movies without him. But by the time we had gotten to school, he had cheered up. He never stayed moody for long when he was with me. I knew that I would never find any friends as close as the three of us. I was going to be so sad when it came time to say goodbye. But finally, that day came. Our things were all packed into boxes, and the removal van arrived early in the morning. It didn't take them long to get everything put in, and we were ready to go. I gave John and Jack a big hug and said goodbye. "Don't forget to come and visit us every holiday," they said. "I will," I replied. But somehow things never worked out that way. At first, we kept in touch, sending each other messages, but eventually the messages became few and far between. We never got round to going back for a visit either. Whenever it was school holidays, Dad was always working and Mom didn't have time to take me. I settled into my new school and I did end up making a few friends. Nothing like the 3Js, of course, but I was happy. My new school had a huge IT department. I loved computers. I was actually a bit of a computer whiz. Every Saturday, I went to a computer club and I was soon top of my class. I spent every evening at home locked up in my room, tapping away on my keyboard. One winter evening, I was sitting at my computer when I decided I would Google my own name. I can bet every one of you watching this has Googled yourself at least once, right? I typed it into the search box, but for some reason I had typed John and not Jane. Why would I do that? I hadn't thought about John for ages. I didn't bother reading anything. I just retyped my name and looked at all the posts. There was a photo of me that had been taken when I won a computer competition at school, and some other boring school stuff. Nothing exciting. I was just about to start a video game when I heard a banging noise downstairs. Someone was hammering on the front door. What's going on? Who's making all that noise? "Open up, it's the FBI," said a man's voice. What on earth do the FBI want at our house? I heard Dad answer the door, then there was the sound of footsteps pounding up the stairs. The door to my bedroom burst open and in came 4 FBI officers. "John, put your hands up. You're under arrest," they said. "I'm Jane," I said. They looked around them in surprise. "Oh, I'm sorry," said the officer.
"We must have made a mistake. You're obviously not who we are looking for. We are looking for a male bank robber." "Why would you think a bank robber might be in our house?" asked Dad. "Because someone searched his name from this location," they replied. "Sorry if we have startled you. We'll leave now." They went back downstairs and I heard Dad close the door behind them. Well, that was definitely a bit of a shock. It's not every day that you get mistaken for a bank robber. I sat back down at my computer, laughing to myself. I started playing against one of my computer friends. As we played, I told him what had just happened.
"Wow, that's crazy,"
he said.
"Wonder who it was that robbed the bank."
When we finished the game, I sat on my bed and thought about what had happened that evening. I wonder who the bank robber could be. I decided I was going to try to find out. I went back onto my computer and started searching again. This time, I typed in John and began to read through all of the information I could find online. It took me a few hours, but eventually, I found what I was looking for. The next day, I told my parents that I was going to be staying late after school for an extra computer lesson. But instead, I went into town. I found out that the bank robber was working as a waiter at a burger place in town. I wasn't going to speak to him, of course, I just wanted to see what he looked like. I went into the burger place and sat at a table. As I picked up the menu, I looked around at all the staff. Which one was the bank robber? I studied the menu, and as I was choosing, a waiter came over to my table. "Can I get you anything?" he asked. I looked up. "John!" I shouted. "Jane!" he said. I couldn't believe it. It was my friend John. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I work here now," he replied. "My parents moved to this town recently." I couldn't believe after all these years I was talking to John again. "Listen, my shift finishes in an hour. Why don't we go for a walk in the park?" said John. "Sure, that sounds great," I said. When John finished work, we walked together to the park. It was just like old times. We got along so well. We were laughing and giggling. John told me that Jack and him hadn't really been friends after I had left. "I guess once you had gone, it wasn't really the same," John said. "Jack didn't want to hang out with me." "I haven't heard from Jack for years either," I said. Eventually, it was time for me to go home. I didn't want the evening to end. I hadn't had so much fun in such a long time. "It's been so nice seeing you again, Jane," said John. "I've missed you." "I've missed you too," I said shyly. That's when I decided I had to tell John. "You know, I used to have a crush on you," I said, laughing. "Well, maybe I still do." John looked at me in shock. "Are you serious? I've always liked you, Jane," he said. "Would you like to go on a date with me?" "Yes, I'd like that very much," I said. When I got home that night, I lay on my bed thinking about John. He couldn't be the bank robber. He was far too nice. There was obviously some mistake. I wouldn't tell him what I thought. He'd think I was crazy. John and I started dating from then on. Whenever John wasn't working, I'd either be at his house or we would be going out for a drive in John's car. He had bought himself a new car when he started work. I loved going out with John in his car, but I was a bit nervous because he always drove so fast. "Slow down, John," I said one night as we were driving home after dinner. But it was too late. I heard the sound of a police siren and saw the lights on the police car flashing. John pulled to the side of the road. "Excuse me, sir, did you know you were speeding?" said the policeman to John. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I won't do it again," said John. The officer asked John for his license. He went back to his car to check out John's details. It seemed like forever before he came back to the car. "Step out of the car, sir," said the policeman. John looked at him in surprise. "Why, what's going on?" he asked. "You were under arrest for robbing a bank," said the policeman. John looked at me in shock. "I haven't done anything, Jane," he said. "They've got the wrong guy." I went to the police station with John. He kept on insisting he was innocent. The policeman didn't believe him, though. "We have the proof it's you," he said. "Could I see that proof, please?" I asked him. The policeman took me into a room and showed me computer footage which proved that John was a bank robber. At first, I was so shocked that John would do such a thing. He had seemed so nice, but suddenly I noticed something. "I think this footage has been tampered with," I said. "What do you mean?" asked the policeman. "I know a lot about computers, and I'm telling you that something isn't right," I replied. "If you will let me, I will set up a reverse trace to track the original IP address." The police agreed to let me look. It didn't take long for me to find out what I was looking for. I gave the information to the policeman. "If you go to this location, you'll find the person who has tampered with the footage," I said. "You better come with us," he said. "We might need your computer expertise." I went to tell John what I had found. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm going to find out the truth." The police drove me to the address that I had given them. They didn't bother knocking on the door. They just broke the door in and ran up the stairs of the house. I followed behind them, my heart beating so fast. As we ran to the room, the policeman in front of me was grabbing hold of a man and putting handcuffs on him. He turned to look at me. Jack, I cried. Is it you that tampered with the footage to make John look guilty? The policeman gave me a curious look. Do you know this man? He asked. Yes, it's John's friend, I replied. Jack looked at me coldly. Yes, it was me, he said. Why would you do that? I asked him. You were his best friend. Because you never noticed me when he was around, Jack shouted. I've always loved you, Jane, but you only ever had eyes for John. I sat in silence as the policeman drove me back to the station. How could Jack have done that? If I hadn't noticed the tampering, John might have ended up in prison. The policeman told John all about what Jack had done to him. You're free to go now, thanks to your girlfriend, he said. We left the police station. It was just the two J's now.
You need to calm down. I'm sick of your behavior. Every single day you're in trouble. If I get one more call from the principal, My mom screamed loudly enough for all the neighbors to hear. Mom, tone it down, I begged. Tone it down? You nincompoop. Do you think that it's free to send you to school? That I just have a bunch of money hidden somewhere and I don't mind wasting it on you? I buy you designer shoes and clothes so your friends don't make fun of you. You have all the books you need and an expensive Mac computer or whatever it's called. You show me no gratitude, she screamed even louder. Honey, calm down, my dad said, looking a bit afraid. My little sister sat in the corner quietly. You shut up. He's like this because of you. He didn't inherit this idiotic behavior from me. You made that boy stupid. And I'm sick of him. And you, she shouted and stormed up to her room. Before I continue my super dramatic story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss out on the daily drama. Thanks. Well, as you may have guessed from the conversation I just brought up, I was a bad kid. Also, my parents weren't in a good place. They were on the verge of a divorce, and that made me feel even worse. So I continued being a horrible kid at school. I'm not quite sure how exactly that was supposed to help the situation, but anyway, maybe I'm stupid like my mom said. That day, I'd gotten kicked out of 2 classes for being rude to the teachers. I told my French teacher, Miss Anderson, that she looked like a donkey on steroids. Everyone laughed. Then later that day, I told my math teacher, Mr. Lewis, that he smelled like a heap of elephant dung. I don't know why I did those things. I guess the attention felt awesome because all the other kids admired how brave I was. So after my principal received 2 reports about me that day, he called my mom, who became extremely angry. They decided that for the next few days, I'd have a detention. I'd also have to clean up the cafeteria after recess and lunch. I didn't mind though. I was used to their boring punishments. That was until my arch rival, Harvey, decided he was going to turn it into some sort of game. Hey, look at Cooper, guys. He's the new janitor. Let's make his job a little bit more exciting, he said. His friends gathered around me and started throwing trash on the floor. Clean that up, stupid. Oh, you're not going to say anything? You're not so funny now, are you, loser? Harvey said. I wanted to swear at him, but after my mom's outburst the night before, I decided it probably wouldn't be a good idea. We'd get into a fight and I'd probably get suspended. So I just picked up the garbage and smiled. I'm doing this now, but observe me very well because this is what your future is going to be like, I said. When I got home that afternoon, my parents were in another pointless argument. I sighed and went up to my room. After chilling out for about an hour, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it and it was my mom. Hey honey, I didn't get a call from the principal today. That's great. Sorry for losing it on you yesterday. I just want you to do better, she said. It's okay, Mom. Great, I'll come to pick you up after detention tomorrow. I thought that maybe if I tried a little harder to be a better person, she'd be less stressed and probably less angry at my dad. Maybe I could be the reason they stayed together. I made an effort to behave myself the next day, too. After detention, I walked out of the classroom, and on my way outside, I heard some laughter coming from the math classroom. I thought it sounded like my mom, but what would she be doing there? I went outside to wait for her. I waited for a few minutes, and then I saw her come out of the school. Hey, Cooper, she shouted. She looked extremely happy. My math teacher walked behind her and smiled. Bye, Sarah, he said. He looked like he was blushing. Bye, Roger, she replied. When we got into my mom's car, I had to ask her what all that was about. Why do you and my math teacher call each other by your first names? What were you doing in his classroom? What's going on? Why are you all happy? I asked. Whoa, calm down there, buddy. Roger and I are old friends from high school. We were just catching up. I heard you told him he smelled like elephant dung. He's not angry, but try to have some more respect, okay? Do you want pizza for dinner? She said, quickly changing the topic. Yeah, I sighed. The next day, I was determined to make Mr. Lewis' life hell. As soon as he walked through the classroom, I yelled, "Elephant dung!" He ignored me and began teaching his lesson. Why do we have to learn this stupid stuff anyway? This makes no sense, I said. He ignored me again. Then I started making paper planes and I threw them at his head while he wasn't looking. When he continued ignoring me, I started rolling my old papers into balls and threw them even harder. Even stupid Harvey joined. When the bell rang, he simply picked up his books and walked out the door. He had a sad expression on his face, which sort of made me feel a bit bad for what I had done. I went to detention again, but my mom wasn't there to pick me up. I hung out with my friends for a few hours after, and then I went home. When I got home, it was nearly 7 o'clock, and I thought my mom would be angry. Surprisingly, she wasn't. When I opened the door, she was standing there in a really tight, pretty dress. She had done her makeup and her hair was done differently. She was really beautiful. "Oh, you're just in time. I need you to watch your baby sisters. Your dad is not back yet, and I'm going on a date," she said. "A what?" I screamed. My eyes bulged out of my head. A date? It's like a thing people go on to get to know each other. Romantically? You've never had one? She laughed. I didn't know what to say. She put on a tall pair of high heels I didn't even know she had, then went to stand by the door nervously. After about 10 minutes, the doorbell rang. She opened the door quickly, and I gasped at who was standing there. It was Mr. Lewis, my math teacher. He had brought her a huge bouquet of roses. "Hello, darling," he said. She took the roses, and he kissed her on the cheek. "What the hell? Mom, you're going out with him? My elephant dung math teacher?" I said. I wanted to break something. "Now listen here, you little. Have some respect for Roger. Don't make me angry. Now go look after your sisters. Make sure they're in bed by 8. Oh, and put these flowers in some water. Good night," she said sternly. As she walked out with Mr. Lewis, he turned back and winked at me. It was a wink that said, "Aha, I'm getting you back for everything you did today, you awful little brat." This was why he said nothing to me earlier. He knew what he was going to do. Ugh, what am I going to do now? I thought. After I put my little sisters to bed, I stayed in the living room watching TV. The front door opened and my dad came in. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Hi, Dad. Where were you?" I asked. "I had a lot of work to finish up at the office. Where's Mom?" "She went on a date," I said while rolling my eyes. My dad looked devastated. "Okay, well, I hope she has a good time," he said, then walked up to his room looking like someone had just dropped a piano on his head. I felt sad for him, and it hurt to watch my parents' marriage fall apart like this. I had to help them stay together somehow. The first step would have to be to get rid of that awful elephant dung math teacher. But how? I really didn't know. The next few days were awful. My mom had a date with Mr. Lewis almost every night. My dad and I became sadder and sadder, but my mom was always happy. She made our favorite meals and always had something positive to say. She paid more attention to her appearance too. She always did her makeup and wore the nicest clothes. I continued getting into trouble at school and the principal kept calling, but she didn't seem to care anymore. I've got to figure something out, I thought. I decided that I'd talk to Mr. Lewis after math class. The next day, I did just that. But first, I was a perfect little angel in his class because I realized that I needed him on my side for this to work. I walked up to him after everyone had left the classroom. "Excuse me, can we talk?" I said. "Sure, bud. What's up?" he smirked. "It's about my mom." He smirked again. "Ah, the lovely Sarah." "Yes, well, the thing is, I don't want my parents to get a divorce. My dad really loves her, and we were a happy family until a few years ago. Things were getting better until you came into the picture. I've got 2 little sisters, and, well, I want them to grow up in a happy family. So I'm begging you, could you please stop seeing my mom?" I said, almost in tears. He looked serious for a while, and then he smirked again. "Okay, I understand, but I have some conditions first. You've got to do everything I ask you to do. You're going to have to be the best student in class. Your grades have to be perfect, nothing less than an A, and no more disrespect. No more throwing paper or making rude comments. You have to behave perfectly. You can't get in trouble in any other class either. No fights, suspensions, detentions, nothing. And if at any point you forget that, I'm going to go out with your mom again. I will cancel my date with her tonight to prove to you that I'm serious. Wow, this is really going to affect my street cred. Well, if school was a street, but I have no other choice, I thought. I agreed with him. We shook hands and I went home. That night, my mom stayed home and she watched a movie with my little sisters. My dad looked a little happier that she was home. The next day, Mr. Lewis was waiting for me by the door as soon as I arrived at school. "Remember our deal?" he said, then walked away. In class that day, I did everything he asked. He wanted me to rearrange the furniture, clean the blackboard, fix some charts, and tell everyone to be quiet. Surprisingly, they listened to me more than they listened to him. After I sat down, he began teaching, and I had to answer every single question he asked. I did so correctly. Everyone was surprised, and to be honest, I was too. I didn't know I was smart. For the next few weeks, I followed Mr. Lewis around everywhere. I carried his books, brought him coffee, and did anything else he asked me to do. My mom and dad started getting closer, so I decided I wouldn't stop. I just had to continue being the teacher's pet. My classmates found this hilarious, though. At first, they thought it was one of my antics, but after the third week, they began to lose respect for me. They talked to me like I was some nerd, and that all became worse after Harvey challenged me to a fight. "Hey, teacher's pet, you've become such a loser. You've got to prove yourself again, dweeb. Meet me on the basketball court after school so I can kick your butt," he said one day at lunch. "You know very well that you're no match for me. I can crush you in under a minute. Why are you acting so brave?" I growled. "Well, we'll see about that." I didn't know what to do. If I didn't show up, everyone would think I was a loser. If I showed up, Mr. Lewis would take my mom out that night, and all the progress my parents made would be thrown in the trash. So, as you guessed, I didn't show up for the fight, and everyone laughed at me the day after. "Hey, loser, I thought you said you could crush me in under a minute, but you were so scared you didn't even show up," Harvey and all his friends teased. I got up angrily and walked to Mr. Lewis' classroom to tell him the deal was off. I couldn't take it anymore. I had memorized his whole schedule, and I knew he didn't have a class, so I just barged into the room. What I saw there caused me to stand, frozen in shock. Right there, in front of the whiteboard, he was making out with the Spanish teacher. He was so engrossed in what he was doing that he didn't even hear me come in. I quickly took out my cell phone and snapped a picture. Then I ran all the way home. "Mom, look at this," I screamed. She ran towards me. "Look at what your darling Roger is doing," I said while showing her the picture. She looked sad for a while, then said, "Well, your dad and I are trying to work things out. Didn't I tell you? So it's okay if he does that. I don't mind." I was so relieved I could have cried. The next day, I threatened Mr. Lewis. I told him that if he didn't do everything I said, I'd show the picture to the principal and he could get fired for inappropriate conduct at work. So right now, I'm not the teacher's pet anymore. In fact, Roger is now the student's pet. My pet. It's great.